It's a consultant in the Millennial. My name is Seth Tower Hurd, syndicated broadcaster, journalist, and entrepreneur. He's Hayden Shaw. He's helped over 30,000 managers not be driven crazy and actually learn how to, make money with more ease. Good summary?
It's a good summary.
And my friend Dan Ilg joins us. We're talking about changing careers and the dynamics of intergenerational business on this episode, which I actually think it translates to almost everything. There's something intergenerational about almost everything. Agree with that? I mean,
unless you have only millennials or only boomers on your staff, and then you're having intergenerational problems in your market. So it just depends on where you want to suck.
Okay. And if you do have an all-millennial company, you're called a startup in Chicago. I've seen a bunch of you go down in flames, and so I wish you a happy next career.
Well, speaking of career changes, and wow, that's a little cold, Seth. Those of you who are doing well, I wish you well. And
hang on, I'm an all-millennial startup.
Yeah.
Although I don't consider myself a startup, I consider myself to be a really boring old client services business. So that's where I'm not a startup.
Fair enough. Boring millennials need love too in business.
Okay, so Dan, you actually recently switched careers, and you're in a family business now that's 11 years old.
Yeah, something like that. Right around
11. Established, not quite legacy,
right.
Somewhere in the middle there. So first of all, when did you know that you might be good at what you're doing, if you just want to describe the business real quick?
Yeah, so it's a third-party logistics firm. My dad started in 2007, right at the perfect timing of the height of the recession, and left his company where he was comfortable and doing well, and decided he wanted to do it himself. So he left, and for me, I always grew up saying, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a businessman like my dad. And then I grew up a little, and I said, I don't want to be a businessman like my dad anymore. So I went to Bible college, got a degree in Bible and communications, and went and found a job in Florida, worked there for 2 years, really loved it, but realized that that was not where my strong suit was. I liked the business feel of the church, and that was not what I was getting as much as I wanted. So ended up switching over, talked to my dad about it, and he said, we'd love to have you on, kind of basically a year-long onboarding process. When I got to the company in Mokina, I realized really quickly that everything that he had taught me growing up was now applicational in the business. So the things that he would teach me growing up of, you don't know if you don't ask, the worst things they're going to say is no, negotiate. Like I was a 14-year-old kid walking around the flea market negotiating with these like 50-year-olds over coins because I thought it was cool. Because that was how my dad raised me, and now I realize why he did all that, because of the business that we're in now. So it's been an interesting kind of discovery process. My onboarding time was much shorter than the other couple employees we've brought on recently, just because I understood.
You'd already been onboarded for 20 years.
Exactly.
Okay,
I'd been being trained for 20-something years.
That's an entire episode that unfortunately we're not going to have time to have you on. That's like our next episode, actually.
Right. Actually, we need his old man.
Oh, yeah.
A 20-year onboarding process. Start him young.
He went 1 for 4, though, so I don't know how proud we want to get him on here.
let's try to book him anyway. That may be better than I've done. I'd have to ask, foreign people that I managed. If I can speak to that real quick before we move on. I did grow up in a business that didn't succeed, actually. Honestly, because my dad, who I haven't talked to or haven't been in contact with in the better part of 15 years at this point, was good at sales, and I did learn a lot there, and specifically was not good at managing inventory. So they're clearing like $1 million a year in the 80s, and couldn't find any margin in it because of too much inventory in retail and not moving it quick enough. And so still, I feel like I got a lot of skills early on that a lot of 20-somethings were bumbling around in the dark trying to figure out in their careers, and I'm really flipping thankful for that, whether or not it actually made it.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to...
That'll have to be a Father's Day episode, because when I think about it, most of the stuff I learned, strengths and weaknesses, came from my old man. And so both the great and the things that I think would irritate people are pretty much the things that were great and the things that irritated people with him.
Okay. Yeah. I had to move Hayden off his mic a little bit there.
I'm just going to keep irritating Seth the entire episode.
You're irritating the audience's ears if you pop over the mic. Okay. So I think it's worth diving in a little bit to the skills that actually translated careers, because I can't think of two things that are hardly further apart than logistics
and small groups faster. Come on, that's the same thing.
And I was in this position, and I think Hayden and I have a slightly different interpretation of this phase of my life. I would say from 27 to almost 30, I was just a complete loser. And I did some stuff in there. I think I completed my 12th or 13th triathlon. I got a second master's degree, but this is why I say that was probably the most disappointing time in my life that I don't ever want to go back to, because I knew I should be doing something else and I didn't go do it. Hopefully I don't ever get to that position again. But a lot of people think, well, no, this is all I can do. I don't know, it's salary, right. I don't know. And a lot of times they are in a job that they're not well suited for. We've mentioned this several times before, but if you got two nickels to rub together, Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder, all that stuff is incredibly valuable when you're frustrated in where you're currently at. See what you're good at anyway and run towards that thing. So what skills translated? Yeah,
I think people are people no matter what industry you're in. And working in a church, it was dealing with people and dealing with a lot of really cool people that I really enjoyed hanging out with and taking out to lunch and getting coffee and learning from and teaching. But then there were also the very difficult people who would interrupt classes as I taught, who would, stand up and walk out if I said something they didn't agree with. And so I've learned that kind of your approach takes the cake on all of that kind of stuff. A lot of the conversations I have now are over the phone with really angry Polish people. And so something goes wrong and I'm able to diffuse the situation, I think, better than some of my coworkers, just because I had to deal with really problem personalities where I couldn't start yelling. Like, you had to be nice. You were working in a church.
Let's scream it, Dan, and see what happens.
I shut down. It's over. But that was one of the biggest things, was just my ability to talk to a lot of different people at different times. Organizationally, I had to stay organized. When I was in Florida, I was leading probably right around 120 small group leaders. And so then moving here, I'm not managing many accounts right now. Obviously, I've only been there for 6-7 months. But having to deal with all the carriers that we're using and different stuff like that is keeping it all on track and building the relationship, because we are trusting them with $100,000 worth of freight on a daily basis. And so if I don't trust them as a person, I'm not going to trust them hauling somebody else's stuff. So that's been a big thing when failure happens, which it happens constantly in the business, of stuff doesn't get to where it needs to be on time or whatever, being able to frame that in the right conversation, kind of privy to the conversation we were having before this of, what does it look like to present a difficult idea, or, hey, you said that this stuff was due on Monday, truck broke down in Reno, Nevada, it's not getting there till Thursday now. And so how do you present that has become a bigger part of what I feel comfortable doing. And just being able to talk to everybody and anybody. That was a skill that I learned growing up.
This is completely off topic, but why is it that so many people in the logistics business, when they give an example of where a truck breaks down, it's probably Reno,
because I have an email on my phone right now about a truck broken down in Reno, Nevada.
But after years of working with logistics, it's like, yeah, well, like your truck broke down in Reno. I'm like, half the time Reno is where they say it breaks down.
Well, they get through Vegas, they're on their way to LA. And
it must be the Bermuda Triangle of
absolutely.
trucking.
Either that or, truck drivers like to gamble a lot, and they think the odds are better in Reno than in
Vegas.
Vegas.
I could go for that.
Makes complete sense. So what didn't transfer? Why decide to make the move?
Yeah, so when I left, one of the rationales that I used when I spoke to my executive pastor when I was leaving was, I feel God calling me to go and, do ministry in the workplace. And I was so, very millennial about it. Oh, it'll just happen. It's going to take place. And then got there and realized that's not how that works. Like, it's work. It's something that you have to go after and do. And so that's been an interesting thing, of something I thought was going to be easy that turned into being a lot more difficult, just because of, one, my position in the place. My last name spells out the company, so it makes it difficult sometimes to have different and real conversations with other employees, but that's neither here nor there.
No, it's not either here nor there. There's a whole body.
Oh, right.
See, I'm just bad with this mic today. There's a whole body of literature Seth and I have talked about called The Perils of the Prince. What's it mean to have the last name on the door?
Right.
I'm too close. I'm too far away.
Well, no, just point at it. See that little thing right there? When that goes red, it means it pops. So that's what we're going for. I would say that as somebody who's worked with the children of or the niece or nephew or something like that, I've been in a few different companies. Ranging from 100 and some to 5,000,
right,
where you run across that, and it can be very frustrating as an employee to get overridden by
absolutely.
The niece or nephew or son or daughter of somebody who's not even maybe just in higher up management, right?
I mean, I thought it was cool. One of the things that my dad and I talked about, because the biggest thing for me was, hey, I moved to Florida, bought a house, sold it in 10 months, didn't make any money, lost money, moved back, have to live with my parents, married for 4 years now. Like, not super exciting for me. But one of the things I talked about is, in what other career do you come out of college and be able to lead 90 adults like that? I mean, as a pastor, I was able to walk into a leadership position that, I mean, honestly, I didn't probably have business walking into, but was given the tools and resources that allowed me to thrive in that. So now that I'm back here, it's not necessarily that, oh, hey, he's the boss's son. I mean, when I was thinking about doing this, I reached out to one of my cousins who is doing the same thing I'm doing for his dad's company right now. And I was like, can you give me some advice? Because this is kind of freaking me out. I don't want to piss off everybody around me, but what does this look like? And he was like, you got to work hard. It was like, it's not a slacking kind of thing. You need to be first one in, last one out. You need to come in on Saturdays. You need to be the late guy, And so I've taken that as kind of a badge for me of, hey, when things go wrong, we had something go wrong on a shipment last Saturday. So I went in the office for 2 hours. My wife isn't a huge fan of it, but when I'm able to buy that kind of, not whatever you want to call it, but buy that credit with the rest of the employees of, hey, he's not just skating by on his last name. He's working hard. I think I work very hard. I'm always negotiating, mostly because I enjoy it. Like, it's really fun for me to mess with people on a constant basis. But it's just a different way of going about it.
And there it goes. You can now no longer send this to your customers.
Well, no, that's negotiating for my customers. So
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's to the carriers.
Yeah, if I can speak to this, and you mentioned a lot of people who speak Polish. The reason your Polish neighbor has more money than you is because they work harder.
Yep.
They're some of the hardest working people.
It's
I've
incredible
ever seen.
the amount of truck in the truck industry right now, because there's a massive shortage. The starting pay for one of my good drivers who has his own trucks, starting pay for another truck on his, you're gone 2 days a week and then home the rest other 5, $100,000. Yeah. You don't need a degree. You need your CDL. That's
which
it.
You can get in 2
and
weeks.
He has been looking for 2 months.
But one of my friends who's Polish and his parents came over with nothing, built it. He's grown the business significantly in the 10 years or so that he's been in management. But the reason he was taken seriously in his 20s as a manager is because he got in the freezer of a cold storage warehouse and threw boxes for a long time. And there is no replacing that. No. There absolutely is no replacing that.
And that's the thing is, my dad always has the conversation with me of, if he sees me getting like slumped or like upset about something, he's like, you need to kind of figure it out. And from this level, I was like, I'm not asking for anything more than what I'm doing now. Like, I don't want anything more than what I'm doing now at this point. But it's just, I came into it with a different understanding, at least because I've seen it fail from kids walking in and then walking out, and then company kind of goes up in flames. And I didn't want that. One, for my dad, he worked really hard to get to a company to where it is now. So I wasn't going to just come in and, oh, hey, look at me. It was, I very much so want to stay on the bottom until I earn the respect of my
Seth just saw a company that
I just saw it.
Saw it. Family business, multiple, second generation or third generation?
Second generation treated it like an ATM. We'll tell that story in the podcast just at some point.
Down.
Can't do it quite yet.
Crashed.
And some questionable, things around that. I will say that I've also worked with other clients that had some sort of dynamic to where I just, or I pitched them and I realized I couldn't do anything because there were multiple family members who had different opinions. And it was like, well, we're a business, but we're a family first. Right. And I'm like, well, be a family on the weekends. And,
9 to 5, you're at the office.
You can't be deadlocked. No. I'm not making fun of them. You just can't be deadlocked.
There was a great grocery store, a Greek grocery store around the corner from Joliet, Illinois, when I first got out of college. We could walk there. It was a great store. Mitchell's Food Bar, or just call it out, is where I work part-time because they owned my house. But if they needed stuff that their small meat market didn't have, you went to Honey Otis. And then like 6 months later, they were gone. And it's because people who work there said, Well, there were about 40 family members on the payroll, but they all wanted to be supervisors, and nobody wanted to work. And so it just goes that way. A couple of things that I've observed in what you're describing that makes sense. If you are, I've been posting some stuff on LinkedIn about is millennial the M word. Seth and I have talked about it. And if you don't, whether you like it or not, older generations are going to go, oh, he's a millennial. So he thinks that's hard work, but it's not really hard work. And so you really have to outwork if you're going to prove yourself to older employees, because you have to overcome that. Yep. Then you have to overcome, well, you were a minister, a pastor, and now you're coming into the family business. And then you have to overcome the fact that your last name is the same as on the door. So you get through those, and you work your way through those, and you gain credibility and respect. And that is absolutely the best way to do it for no matter what business you're in.
And I think that... someone who erred probably on the side, I erred on the side of being too docile, and then I erred on the side of being too hard charging, and hopefully has found a middle ground here in my 30s. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and they said, we think we could do a lot better job on this part of the business. And based on what you've done in, kind of in your area, we think you could really leverage a lot here. Politically, it's going to take at least 2 years before we can even touch that. And I just... When I was younger, I would have been like, what's the point? Like, why watch them be dumb for 2 years? And now I'm like, okay, I got time. Right.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
That was one of the things that I think when we were talking about transferring skills, transferred super well from ministry to where I'm at now is in ministry, I think you have to constantly have a 30,000-foot view. Like constantly. And so I learned that through 3-4 years of doing it. And so now when things are happening or whatever it looks like, I can look 5 years down the line. I can look from 30,000 feet and see, hey, this isn't forever. This isn't what I'm going to be doing forever. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now, which I never really expected. Like I didn't. I thought, okay, I'm going to go in and we'll grind out for 5 years and then figure it out after that. But I really enjoy what I'm doing now. But knowing that 30,000-foot view of what that looks like is a game changer when conversations in the office or whatever it might be of, I know what this looks like long term. This is what I'm thinking about in the next 20 years versus everybody else in 5.
What I think is really fun, though, is the reason you like the job you're doing now is because your old man taught you to trade
absolutely.
coins.
Yep.
Yeah, and so you learned early on. It's stuff you thought were fun when you were in middle school.
Yeah,
and
I thought it was
fun
super
now.
fun. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I'm finally getting what Hayden told me maybe a year ago when I looked at a couple things I did in my career or tried that I just wound up being just miserable in, and I was like, why did I? And at the time, I thought, well, I'm joining a good mission or a good purpose, or I can really help out here, those things were true in theory. In reality, I was just miserable.
Right.
And Nathan was like, it's worth it to know, what you don't like. And at the time, I had a different perspective. I'm like, but I could have had something else with that time.
Don't move to Florida and buy a house and then figure it out.
Well, now, like I said, I just
if you hadn't have been all in,
right?
If you would not have been all in, you would not have known that soon. This is not for me.
Oh yeah.
You would not have listened to your wife. You would have said, "No, I think this is what I went to school for." You go all in. You buy a house. You're like, "Oh crap, this is not what I should do." And then Jordan goes, "Yeah, I know."
But we just bought a house. No, it was probably 2.5 months after we bought the house that I started talking to my dad about what would this look like. And I was like, oh gosh, what did you do?
Okay, you got to be out because it's a pretty intense business. You said 12:50, so I think that's it. Any rapid fire last round, Hayden?
No, we'll just wrap it up while you get out of here.
Okay. This is sort of like on Skype where you you hang up and do the closing thing, except in this case, the guest is actually walking out of the room.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll see you for non-recording time sometime soon, okay?
Please don't drop the mic. We'd have to buy another.
I'm going to turn that mic away while you just turn it away here so that we don't get it, picking up. There we go.
Since I'm not doing well with the green line.
No, you're good.
I just think there's 3 or 4 things that are really useful for anybody. The first one is, Seth has said more than once, go spend the money on a strength finder. I couldn't agree more. Myers-Briggs. And while a lot of people on TED Talks poo-poo Myers-Briggs and a Harvard Business Review write up a personality survey, say Myers-Briggs isn't verifiable, the point is it's pretty helpful for a whole lot of people. And so, and then along with that, how you were raised. So, Seth and his father are not super tight. Not having talked to him for 15 years would be kind of a small indicator of not being tight.
Yeah, can I throw in something that's hilarious? So just the Harvard thing. I had to reach out to a friend of a friend this week.
Yeah.
And my friend said, "Oh yeah, you should talk to this guy. He was student body president at Indiana University, and then he went on to Harvard." And so I shot him an email, which I haven't heard back yet, so I have no idea how he took it. Hey, well, blah, blah, blah says, you were at IU and then president of Harvard. I averaged 2.4 points per game as the small forward down at the junior college, so I guess we both had some higher ed success.
There's nothing wrong with 2.4 points a game.
But what you said there about my dad and I, and I am kind of trying to patch some things up with my dad's family anyway, and trying some things there. But what you said, we never fully, kind of partition our careers from the way we grew up, the way we see things. And so for a long time, I had a fear of sales because I kind of had a negative connotation with some childhood stuff. And eventually I kind of slid into realizing I was really good at it.
It's so interesting that, with the logistics thing, there was a guy I had in a seminar who goes, when you ask us, think about great examples you've had in management and think about the worst examples you've had in management. He said, my father was the worst example. And yet, the things that make me successful are the best things that he wouldn't have been in business if he wasn't good at some things. He was an absolute creep, but he was really good at some things. And so he said, it's been hard for me to make my peace with the good things, the things he was good at, because of all the things that were so obviously that he was bad at. I think one of the big walkaways from this is we learn more from the people that we don't like working for than we do from the people who are great examples, because the people we don't like working for scald it into us. Psychologists call it aversive conditioning. You don't forget. And then sometimes with our own parents, there are things that we're like, great. And, I know Dan's family, our kids are about the same age, and one of my sons was in a band with his brother. But, so their family gets along great. And you say, I learned that. Where did I learn that? Why did I like that? Whether you had a great experience or a not so great experience, we end up learning some of the most important things, our skills, from our parents. And so surveys are great. Also, tracking back your history can give you the things that get down to the kind of the psychological roots of what you like and what you don't.
And I think if we can even do a callback to the nonprofits episode we did, which go back and listen to that whole thing if you didn't catch that one. Everybody in kind of the business space in some way is going to have a relationship with a nonprofit. The more I work, the more I believe that, we would have a better world if people kind of jumped back and forth between the two. I do 100% believe people in the nonprofit space would benefit from being in the for-profit world, at least for a bit. And I think that people in the for-profit world, if you could, kind of take a break or take a detour or whatever and go in the nonprofit space at some point to actually work, I think you could really, really, bring some kind of diversity of thought there.
What a great observation. And Seth Tower Hurd, it's not, you just didn't hear it from Seth. Peter Drucker said the same thing. He wrapped up his career in probably his 80s and then into his 90s. He spent more of his time working in third sector and nonprofit organizations. And his big thing is nonprofits actually can teach business how to motivate people, because business can buy people and nonprofits have to sell people on their mission and what they're doing. And so if you motivate people like a nonprofit and have salary like a for-profit, you've got the full package of what can keep people moving. And a lot of nonprofit people, and we've both been in them, a lot of nonprofit people could do a whole lot better if they were better managed. And but I agree with Jack Welch that businesses are over-managed and under-led, and nonprofits are usually over-led and under-managed.
Let's go out on this because we talked about, transitioning careers if it's you. I think that one of the best things that you can do as a manager is if you're frustrated with somebody and they're frustrated with you, it may just be that it's just not ever going to be the right fit. And I think it's better to have that conversation than just kind of, pray that they would quit on their own, or something miraculous has happened, they'd win the lottery or something and get out of your hair. I think a lot of people kind of realize they're beating their head against the wall and want to do something else. And sometimes, like I had the conversation with Amanda this week. I like blowing stuff up. I think it's part of the reason I work in the entrepreneurial space, because I can pivot and build something new, and I'm happy. A lot of people are scared to take that step. If you have a bad employee, sometimes I
just think it sounds great. I like blowing stuff up. It sounds like kind of a fourth grader with Tinker Toys or Legos.
Yeah, I did that. In fourth grade, I caught my cutoffs on fire and had to roll around in the dirt playing with fire on the fire.
Ladies and gents, that we got to quit, but that is a story I want to hear the rest of.
Okay, yes. But no, respond to this thought I'm having. I think that sometimes you can mentor someone out of a job you don't want them in, and have a friend in contact for life because you did it.
I can count 20 people. Almost always. That's not true. 2/3 of the time, they were not Hayden fans as I managed them out. Cutting somebody from a job, that's irresponsible. That's not mentoring. Mentoring, the frequent phrase in HR is managing somebody out. I think your phrase is better. I'm going to quote you from now on. Mentor them out. And 2/3 of the time, they were not Hayden fans. I can't think of anyone who hasn't got back to me and said, thank you so much for helping me understand that. And because it's mentoring, it's the kindest thing you can do. Now, some people are like, I know I don't like this. The people who are not Hayden fans are the ones that were like, I don't like this, but it's the organization's problem that I don't like this, and everyone else has to change.
Yeah.
And those folks are just right now stuck in their own view of the world, and they need some time away to get a grip on that. And they usually need another experience. The very best thing that happened for Dan's family business is that he worked someplace else before he came in the family business, because now he goes, oh, this is what happens everywhere. This just isn't what happens because I have the same last name and my dad runs the place.
Yeah, and this could probably be a whole episode, but there are companies out there that will do a swap. Right, because
you bet.
When I was thinking about the relatives in business thing, even good family friends, the son, who's utterly brilliant, has an internship at the dad's company.
Yeah.
Is it one of the top schools in America, and could have gotten into most of the top schools in America, so totally earned it. But then there's also that thing, right, where people kind of know who your dad is. So it's not just family business. This happens. There's almost a family relational aspect to any company over, 15 people. But what I did want to mention when you were saying, we were talking about managing people out, the networking episode. When people are like, oh, I feel creepy networking. Here's how to not feel creepy networking. I just found out that, some folks I used to work with wound up getting laid off in a reduction of force. I've shot out a bunch of emails saying, what are you looking for? How can I help? And I've already got one company, I think, that's maybe more ready to interview the person than the person is ready to look for a job, because the job continues for another 30 days. And I'm like, no, get a resume out. I've got basically their chief operating officer looking for your resume coming through. As much as you can, you want to network, people will bend over backwards for you 5 years from now if you sincerely tried to help them find their next step when they don't have.
What a great way to wrap it up.
Hey, he's Hayden Shaw. You can check out peopledrivenresults.com for more on your people, process, and generational stuff going on. He's helped over 30,000 managers, including some of the top corporations in America that you've definitely heard of. peopledrivenresults.com. My name is Seth Tower Hurd. You can find out more at digitalprofitfarm.com. I lead a team that builds websites and that actually make money. We do social media management and also podcasts just like this one that can get you reaching thousands of customers and potential customers within a few months. We can help you go from idea all the way to 3 months out where you've got an audience. You can find out more once again at digitalprofitfarm.com. Both of those are in the show notes for either the video or the podcast, depending on how you're consuming that. And that's pretty much it. Anything I missed?
We're golden.
This is The Consultant and the Millennial.